Welcome to the TravelPulse podcast. Here's your host, Mark Murphy.
Hey, it's Mark Murphy back with the TravelPulse podcast. You may have thought I was on vacation last week, but that's a lie. I was in New York City hosting the annual Travvy Awards. It was our 5th annual Travvy Award show. It was at Gotham Hall. We had a full house. Some of the top execs in the industry from suppliers and destinations were there, and some of the top agency personnel were there as well as individual travel agents who were invited to be guests either by us and matching them with certain suppliers that they wanted to have a connection with but didn't, and their top producers. Of course, many of those suppliers brought their own top producing agents there as well. Well, while we were doing that, we wanted to kind of highlight and say, hey, what's the difference with the Travvy Awards and everything else that's out there? If you're a consumer, basically the Travvy Awards are the Oscars of the travel industry. Travel agents across the country vote on these awards. They choose the best of the best. And that's from their perspective and the perspective from tens of millions of customers who use travel agents to go on vacation every year. Now, there are some perennial winners and there's some folks that come out of nowhere. And then there are people that, participate, but, unfortunately didn't make the cut and get that coveted Travvy award trophy, if you would, that so many of them love to display and, put their logo on their website and highlight it in their advertising because, again, it's validation from the most important sales channel that these suppliers work with, which is travel agents. But at the same time, the Travvy Awards are really a recognition, not just of the suppliers and destinations. In fact, I think that's secondary. I think it's a recognition of the importance of travel agents. And so when somebody tells me they're not going to participate because they don't believe in paying to enter into an award scenario, I think it's really short-sighted. And the reason being is we're going to start 3 weeks from now, literally 3 weeks after the Travvy Awards, we're going to start the process for next year's Travvy Awards. There's an editorial process. There's a survey that goes out to agents because we're always looking for new products because the industry is constantly transforming and new discoveries. And then we go through that, we create the nominations. We're talking months of work with lots of people on hand to do that, which takes time from other things. It's a cost of doing business. So to pay a few $100s to participate as a nominee and have your name there in the mix is worth a few $100s, frankly, because we put tens of thousands of eyeballs on those names. So that's number one, just great that you got nominated. If you can't see the forest for the trees as a supplier destination because, oh my God, it's $500 to enter, then I can't help you. But we actually get that, and it's very disappointing, to be frank. At the same time, when you have an event where you're going to recognize those suppliers and destinations, but at the same time, anybody who's been to the event knows that I'm recognizing the agents who are the ones that are the actual voters who get feedback from millions of customers. Those are the ones who it's just amazing. And of course, the Travvy Awards is the only industry award that gets featured on television every year since it's been around. So 5 years now, we have been out to millions of consumers the very next morning, which sucks for me, but I get booked. I did 26 TV and radio interviews again the Thursday after the Travvy Awards last week. It went really well, and I was able to talk about why travel agents, why they're important, and why we think the Travvy Awards are so critical for customers to look at because, again, it puts a spotlight on these sellers of travel. And to be frank, it's always a challenge because if I go out on the street and talk to 10 customers or potential customers of travel agents about travel agents, I might get one or two that understand truly what travel agents do and the cost of business versus direct, et cetera, where there's no cost for the most part working with travel agents. We find that 80 to 90% of them don't understand the business. They don't understand the model. They don't understand the benefit. So we've been on a one company crusade, to be frank, in this industry because nobody does what we do, whether it's on TravelPulse, whether it's through our syndication on MSN.com, whether it's through me being on TV for 8.5 years now, talking about the merits and the reasons to use travel agents. We have been literally a one company marching band, if you would, in sync, talking about the virtues of travel agents. I challenge anyone to show me anybody out there on the agency side, consortia side, anywhere that has done anything close to what we've done. In fact, I could probably say if you took them all in a bucket and put it together, it still wouldn't add up to what we've been able to do. So with that said, we put a huge focus on the Travvy Awards and those agents for that particular reason. They are the drivers in many cases of 80 or 90% of the business that these suppliers and destinations get. So it's awesome to have folks there that want to recognize that. We love it. Folks like Allianz Global Assistance, been a sponsor for year in and year out, our top sponsor at the Travvy Awards. Love their product, love the fact that they embrace agents. And, they're always there to support agents. And so that's exciting. We had Jamaica was there as a sponsor. Fantastic to have Jamaica there. It's a top destination for travel agents, and they just do a great job of engaging agents and rewarding them with the One Love Rewards program and the Jamaica Specialist program that's at travelagentacademy.com, making sure that agents really are up to speed on the destination. And then we also had Shore Trips, who's a gold winner in shore excursions. The Carps, they were there. And again, they're big supporters of agents. And they're one of those little things that you go, if you talk with an agent and they're using Short Trips, they're saving the customer money on their vacation and giving them an unbelievable experience to get off the ship or go out and experience a great excursion. They do it, and they do it for less money than when you book it through the cruise line in most cases. So customer saves, get a great experience. The travel agent, is able to differentiate themselves, and so on and so forth. And of course, we had Hotel Xcaret, which is a great new property in Mexico, Riviera Maya, just south of Playa del Carmen. And we also had La Colección, which was great to have because they have the Live Aqua product, and that Live Aqua, little hint, their Playa del Carmen property on Fifth Avenue down there. Love it. Little boutique-y, definitely doesn't feel like a lot of their other products. Totally different, but great place to stay. It's not on the beach, but I love the location right on Fifth Avenue in the heart of Playa del Carmen, and I'd go back in a heartbeat. So with that said, at the Travvy Awards, I was taken aback just a little bit towards the end when somebody came off the stage and they had won silver, and they were, I hadn't seen them all night. And I said, hey, congratulations, this and that. And the answer I got was, well, don't congratulate me. I'm not happy because, I'm tired of winning silver, and just kind of stormed off. And I was like, wow. What happened to recognizing travel agents and the fact that the Travvy Awards goes on TV the next day? It's the impetus by which we get all these bookings in the media space on the consumer side. We can tout the value of travel agents as they vote for these folks, and on and on and on. You would think that people would say, hey, let me take a step back and see the big picture. But this person, all they could do is complain because I guess they've gotten silver too many times in a row, which is second place, and they weren't happy about it. So, and I'm looking at this person saying, well, we're not, and I said this, well, we're not the ones who do the voting. It's the agents. So, you mad at the agents? And didn't really get a response. Person stormed off. I heard they kind of just like left. And I was thinking, wow, you know what? Don't come back. And that's what they said. They said, I'm not coming back. I'm tired of getting silver. It's okay. Then don't come back. Don't bother coming back. We don't need you here. We're doing just fine supporting travel agents, and we want people that are positive, that see what we see, and understand that distribution channel is super critical to the success of a lot of these suppliers and destinations. And you know what? Sure, it sucks if you lose or you get out of the running and you don't get gold or silver, but the fact that you're there is supporting the travel agency channel. It's a good thing. That's why we set the price of the tables and everything at just about break even, because we want to have a sold out house. We want to have everybody there, and we want to have a great rockin' time. So to me, it's not so much about did you win or lose, and it's great if you win. It's about showing your support for travel agents. Here's what's crazy. The person I'm referring to, I'm not going to tell you who it is, but that person comes from the agency side. And I was like, man, that is just so disappointing. It is. I was truly shocked. And trust me, a little hard to shock me, but I was shocked at the response. And you know what? My attitude is like, good riddance, don't come back. So if you're listening, you know what I'm talking about. Don't come back. With that said, let's move on to some more fun stuff. So I always like to cover some of the things that that we see on just the normal course of, just the normal course of business, reporting, et cetera. But the thing that's just happened over the weekend was that United Airlines passenger, we call it the middle seat meltdown. What the hell was up with that woman? She was just sitting there. She was so freaking obnoxious. She gets on her phone. If you don't know the story, this woman's, it looks like she's between two heavier set women. And she gets on the phone, and I guess before takeoff, she's on the phone complaining about how she's getting sandwiched and how she has no room and she can barely breathe. But then on the high side, at least they can keep me warm, etc. And I guess the plane was full, so she asked for it to move, and there wasn't a seat. And then the person who's getting the barrage, the body shaming, all this crap. Like, screw this body shaming. She's just rude. It's not about body shaming, or fat shaming. It's basically, she's a rude bitch, is basically what this woman is. Rude bitch. And that's what the lady said. She's like, get this bitch out of here and put her somewhere else or move me. So I thought that was great. The other passengers chimed in, but now let me give you a counterpoint. Okay. Now that you heard my straight up assessment of it. Here's the counterpoint. If the airline has people, and I can't tell you if this was the case there, but if a person on that seat, because those seats are so tiny, if that person is overflowing into the other passenger seat, then that airline is obligated to make that person buy two seats. That's just the reality of it. And some people say, oh my God, that's body shaming, it's fat shaming. No, the seat is like 17 inches across. So if you can't fit, you can't fit. If that's the case, then buy a first class seat. If that's the case, buy two seats. And that's happened in the past. But so I can see both sides, but here's what is so crazy. The woman, instead of getting on the phone and being a rude bitch, she could have basically said, you know what, let me talk to the flight attendants. And she could have gotten up and said, listen, I'm sandwiched between two people. They should have each taken two seats. I'm making this up. I don't know, because you can't really make it out well enough on the video. And if that is indeed the case, she could have made her case. And if there were no other seats, then they could have rebooked her on a later flight. End of story. But she chose to handle it in a really obnoxious way. And she got slapped on social media. She got slapped on the plane by other passengers because it was just uncalled for. It could have been handled totally differently. So, that just gives us the whole thing on like life. Life and things that happen are not about what happens to you. It's about how you react to things. And that is absolutely true. And in my case, I've always tried to react in an appropriate way, but everybody screws up. So I'm not throwing the lady under the bus. She might have, who knows what went on in her world that day. Maybe her husband just died at the hospital and she's flying home. Who the hell knows? That's just the way it is. But it didn't seem like there was anything traumatic going on. It just seemed like she was just being rude, and hence why she got the whole pushback. So with that said, we move on, but that was a crazy story, and that's making the rounds. I think it's been watched probably 2.5 million times, that video already, because the person put it up on Facebook, and good for them. I told you about my story a couple of weeks ago, leaving out of the Delta terminal at LaGuardia and getting run over by a senior citizen, and how she ended up sitting in the seat next to me. And by the way, I did take a photo of her, but I didn't senior shame her. Was that? Yeah. Hashtag senior shame. I didn't shame her by posting her photo, but she was so miserable that I did take a photo just to remember to smile. So those days when I'm feeling like, it's a bad day, whatever, I just look at her picture and it's just a miserable face. She's just so miserable. Not in the fact that she doesn't look attractive or whatever. She's just got this scowl. And I'm talking like a scowl that lasted 3 hours. So obviously it's permanent. So with that said, hey, we're moving out of the airline business and we're going to Airbnb. And kind of funny with Airbnb, I don't know if you realize this, but there are some illegal listings. There have been people who have gone out, listed properties that they don't own. People will pay. Then they show up and there's people living in the house. They'll take the pictures like off a real estate website. And I did a segment on Fox News. Gosh, I think it was Fox and Friends a few years ago. And I got a lot of crap from, VRBO owners, et cetera. Like, that's, that doesn't happen. And I'm like, you know what? It does happen. And here are ways you can avoid getting scammed or burned as a consumer. So my personal experience with Airbnb has been, terrible, okay, and great. And as somebody who has to really try all different channels and all different things, I've done it. I'm kind of done with Airbnb from the standpoint of, I don't want to go sleep in some dude's bed in his apartment when he's, taking a couple of weeks and going somewhere on vacation and he's putting it on Airbnb. No thanks. I'd rather go and stay at a hotel. That's just me. Better amenities, better things. Might pay a little bit more, but hey, it's okay. Now, it's a little different if you're doing a weekly vacation rental, let's say in Nags Head in North Carolina or the Jersey Shore or up on Cape Cod. So in Nantucket, again, they're different reasons to book different ways. And I'm not saying you always book with a travel agent or never book Airbnb, but here's what I will say. When I posted a story from TravelPulse that said Airbnb illegal listings, it was in New York and New York was cracking down, that some of the people would show up and now they don't have a place to stay. That actually has happened to me. I've actually shown up. I've done it probably a dozen times, 12 to 15 stays ballpark. And I've shown up at a place where there's garbage on the floor. It's dirty. It's disgusting. There's dirty towels. Gross. And I've had to turn around and walk out. Then I got to now go find a place in New York City, let's say, because the place that I booked for 3 nights is a dump. And they're like, oh, well, we'll get a maid over. No, I'm out. Like this place is too gross. And so you got to call Airbnb, you got to process the refund, then you got to go find a place. Well, that truly sucks, especially if you booked far enough out to get a good deal. And now there's a convention in town and the Holiday Inn in Midtown is $750. You're screwed. And that's what's happened to people. So when I posted that and I shared that I've had some, crap, okay, great stays, some of my friends on Facebook are like, oh, I've used Airbnb and I do vacation rentals and yada, yada, yada. Again, hey, dude, I get it. If you're doing a weekly rental from VRBO, wherever, Nags Head, North Carolina, we'll stick with North Carolina, the Outer Banks, then that is very different going down there and doing that versus going and booking a room in some guy's apartment or lady's apartment or, using their apartment or their studio, et cetera, and doing like a city stay. I showed up in LA and they said, oh, yeah, sorry, we had to cancel. That's the other thing. They canceled my reservation the day I was arriving. So I land and I got an alert that says my stuff's been canceled, but we have a building close by. I go, oh, fantastic. Well, close by was like 3.5 miles from where I was supposed to be in LA. Now, for anybody who's ever been in LA, yeah, that it was like 25, 30 minutes away. Please. If I wanted to book over there, I would have booked over there the first time. But that's the stuff that happens. So my friends are saying, hey, VRBO and, different types of vacation rentals, it's not the same. If you book one vacation rental every other year, you don't have the same scope that I have doing it 12 or 15 times in an 18-month period. And that's the difference. So, those who come out and say, oh, it's all fine and well, again, travel agents, no, because travel agents sell travel all the time. I travel all the time. And because I travel all the time, I see all of it. Not 100%, but a good chunk. Some guy takes 2 vacations a year and tells me, oh, this is a great property. And on TripAdvisor says it's 5-star. And I show up and I go, no, it's 3. And it truly sucks. And it sucks that you wrote a 5-star review because you don't know what the hell you're talking about. That's where we get rid of the amateurs and we turn to the pros, and those pros tend to be travel agents. So not saying all Airbnb is bad, but you really would want some quality control, and reviews themselves only go so far. So out of the four or 5 terrible stays that were booked, they were all good reviews. I wouldn't have booked something that had bad reviews, but they still sucked. So now what do you do? And in my case, I had to find a hotel, and it was a pain in the ass because I had bags with me and I was on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. And now I'm like, okay, where do I go? What do I do? Luckily, I have some friends in the business and I was able to get myself bailed out. Not so easy for the average customer. What about just some social media losers this week? I always like talking about social media losers. You know why? Because people can be such idiots on social media. Or they can come across as if they are experts because they're so just adamant about, let me just tell you something, just the way it is. And I have to laugh because then you read what they're saying, and in many cases, it's literally lifted from somewhere else, or they watched something or heard a report that was completely inaccurate and then kind of summarized the report as if, it was the gospel. You have to ask yourself, okay, so you watched a documentary. Great. When they showed you that picture, did you realize they were talking about one place, but they were showing you a picture from a different place? I don't think so. So, case in point, we did some filming in September and into October all over Quintana Roo in Mexico. It's up on YouTube. It's on the TravelPulse channel. You could say, you could type TravelPulse, is it safe to go to Mexico? Whatever. It's about 12 minutes long because it covers the entire state. So we cover Isla Mujeres, we go down to Playa del Carmen, we go to Cozumel, we go to obviously Riviera Maya, Playa del Carmen, and then up into the hotel zone in Cancun. And we cover all aspects of it. We interview consumers, get their take, and so on and so forth. So it's out there. It's on YouTube. But if you go down and you look at the comments on YouTube, it's like 10-1. Hey, I totally agree. I just got back from Cancun. It was great. I'd go again. I took my family. I never once felt threatened. I totally agree with that assessment. But then you see Cynthia, and we'll tell you her last name. You can see it on YouTube if it's her real last name. And she said this thing, do not travel in caps to Cancun. I'm like, wow, do not travel to Cancun. Okay. And then she went on to talk about how she watched a documentary, and it was that BBC documentary, if you guys remember, and it was complete horseshit. And the reason I say it's complete horseshit, it's because the documentary would be talking about Cancun, but then would be cutting away and showing you stuff in Acapulco. And my point was, you know what? Nobody goes to Acapulco that's an American. It just is what it is. We don't go to Acapulco. Acapulco has been a local destination for years now. The only time I go to Acapulco is for Tianguis, which is coming up, I think, at the end of March, beginning of April. So I'll be there for that. The reason it dried up is airlines stopped servicing the destination. It's a pain in the ass to get to. And they've got a higher crime rate. And stuff is happening a little too close for comfort for some folks. But it's really not a destination for Americans or Canadians or anybody but, local Mexicans and national Mexicans, people driving up from Mexico City who want to experience Acapulco, etc. I hit the water there for a sec. So I read the comment, and she's talking about, she wouldn't go. She watched the documentary. Well, the documentary's a bunch of crap. It's pieced together. It's not factually correct. It's meant to be sensational, which is a lot of the news reporting today. And one of the comments she wrote was, she said that, 130 taxi drivers have been killed, by the cartels, I don't know what time frame. I certainly know of some of the stories where, a guy sitting in his taxi on a side street, he gets shot and killed in his taxi. And then you say, well, did they just feel like killing a taxi driver that day? Well, no, because if you actually know the market down there, some of those taxi drivers may decide that they'd like to make a little extra money, so they start distributing, because they're traveling around, obviously, in their taxis, distributing drugs. Now, imagine if that taxi driver's out there distributing drugs for Cartel A, and Cartel B is like, I'm going to send a message. So it's not just random violence. It's not random killings. They're targeted killings that are taking place as these cartels are battling each other for the turf to sell the drugs. And if taxi drivers are getting killed, and I'm not a detective, I'm not telling you that I've gone down there and played Sherlock Holmes and figured it all out. I will tell you that in speaking to taxi drivers on my dozens and dozens and dozens of trips to that part of Mexico, the answer is, yeah, things happen, and that's why I, as the driver, don't participate in that, even though I get asked. And I say, thank you, but no, I'm fine. And that's the response for all the questions that I'll ask, because I'm like Curious George. I want to know what it is that they're hearing, seeing, etc. Or, hey, this just happened over here next to the Paradisus Hotel at the taxi line. Two guys, came up, got out. They knew who they were looking for. The guy in the taxi knew it was him. He got out and ran, and they chased him down and gunned him down outside the resort, which is north of Playa del Carmen. That absolutely happened. But again, why were they there? They were there to find that guy and take him out. And it's unfortunate, obviously, and it happened outside of a hotel, a little too close for comfort. But again, when somebody conflates that with, I'm never going to the destination ever again, then I have to ask them, well, there are murders in Philadelphia, a lot. There are hundreds of murders in New York every year. There are hundreds of murders every year in Chicago. In Chicago, thousands of people get shot every freaking year. There's some weekends, 50, 60, 70 people just in a small city like Chicago get shot. And then we're like telling people not to go to Cancun. So, I'm sorry, but crime is everywhere. And some of the commenters note that. And it's about being smart. Again, you'll see some of the headlines, seven shot and killed in a local bar in Playa del Carmen. When you read that, you think, oh, Playa del Carmen, local bar, Fifth Avenue, beach bar, et cetera, tourists. No, it was like a 25-minute drive outside of town, due west. And nobody would ever go there as a tourist. So it was a targeted thing again. And we just want to make sure that it doesn't come into the tourist areas. And on rare occasions, things have happened. But again, it's basically they're targeting somebody who happens to be there, like a vendor selling something on the beach, which happened a while ago in Cancun. But that's the exception to the rule. And if you live anywhere in the US, things happen all the time. And I'll just give you one more example. The 21-year-old nut job that went into the bank in the middle of Florida and just killed 5 random people. Killed a customer and I think 4 workers, doesn't know any of them didn't know them from anywhere, never had an interaction with them, never had any problem with them. It wasn't this revenge thing, nothing. It was just the guy just went in, had a gun and shot and killed 5 freaking people. So what, you're not going to go into a bank now in Florida? No, it's just, hey folks, things can happen anywhere. And for a country as violent as ours, I find it ironic when the news media goes nuts about something that happens in another place and tries to conflate it with, fear mongering. And that's just a shame. The best thing you can do as a traveler is go to places that are getting hammered with stuff like that, because as those economies improve and as those folks have a great living taking care of people in the hospitality space when they come on vacation, they're less likely to then participate in drugs and everything else. On the other hand, if you make it so difficult because you refuse to go there and then business drops and then they lay off workers, you actually feed the beast, if that makes sense. That's something Bill O'Reilly didn't understand when he was bashing Mexico. I think it was in 2009. And it was either 2009 or 2010. And he's basically saying boycott Mexico because, the government's corrupt and illegal immigration. And my point was, well, yeah, boycott the destination. And what's going to happen? You're going to penalize the workers. And then those penalized workers aren't going to be able to earn a living. Oh, and what are they going to do, Bill? They're going to go fucking north and try to get into the country illegally. So you're actually going to create the problem you supposedly want to stop. And I'm a little passionate about it. And I'm sorry I dropped the F-bomb. I never do. By the way, that was sarcasm. But seriously, all kidding aside, I've tried to tone down the cursing a little bit. And that one just came out because I'm so aggravated with these anchors and these people that do what they do, and then they don't understand the law of unintended consequences. Sure, it sounds good, boycott them, etc. But if your goal is to stop illegal immigration, the best thing to do to stop illegal immigration is to make sure people want to stay in their own country because they have opportunities there. That's the number one thing. And then I have no problem cherry picking the best of the best, because again, we want to have immigration to fuel our future growth. And I have immigrants who work for me. I've had immigrants that I've sponsored coming out of college, and they are huge contributors to our company. And some have come, worked, and then gone on to bigger jobs. One of my guys just recently spent 13 years with me after I sponsored him, got his green card in 14 months, became a U.S. citizen, I believe, in 2012. Never had to leave, and but never had to stay. And he got headhunted for this amazing opportunity. I said, dude, you got to go do it. And he was concerned, like he didn't want to let me down. But I was like, my God, that's freaking, it's a testimonial to what you've accomplished. And it's such a great story. And that guy is Nick Chu. And he is now over at TD Bank building an entire internal video team for North America for TD Bank. And he's the guy that got us into the video game back in 2005 on TravelPulse. So amazing run. And I hired him about 3 weeks before his student visa was going to run out and sponsored him. But I didn't have a job for him. I just knew that this guy had talent. And I wanted to give it a shot. So I stepped up, and we didn't have the money and didn't have the position, but I knew he'd be valuable. And boy, paid off in spades. And now the guy's just a massive contributor. And it's just another just another great immigration story when it's done right. So with that said, I've been talking for 30 minutes, so I kind of have to go because I try not to go over 30 minutes, but I always like to give you all some good travel tips. You got President's Weekend coming up. I looked at some of the properties that are out there and some of the deals. And one of the things that I found that was a really good bargain if you want to get away for President's Weekend, I covered it on Fox Philly just on Monday, but I would suggest you think about going, if you're in the Northeast, going to Washington, D.C., and doing the museums and all of that. And hopefully it'll be a lot warmer by then versus this week because it's bloody cold up in the Northeast. At the same time, I'll stay in New York. And a lot of people will leave and try to go to warm destinations. Do a city destination. Go out and do some fine dining. Go out and do the museums. Go see a Broadway show if you're in New York, or go see the museums and the sites in Washington, D.C. Amtrak, if you book it right now, is about $45 per person to go from Philadelphia either way. If you are from outside that area, look at sort of contrarian destinations. Look at Seattle if you're out on the West Coast, or Portland, Oregon, because the flights are far cheaper and the hotel stays, and all of the ones I just mentioned are a fraction of what they normally are. Case in point, when was the last time you could book the Mandarin Oriental in Washington, D.C. for under $200 a night for a holiday weekend? So you can have the spa, the hotel, the great service, go out, do sightseeing, do 3 nights. You're talking about $600 just for the hotel for a couple, and then whatever you decide to spend on top. And if you're coming from the Northeast and you're using Amtrak, it's going to be $90 to do a round trip ticket on Amtrak. And this is, again, pricing based on a few days ago. So double check that pricing. But I always look at the contrarian destination and do something while everyone's going to, flying down to Miami. What if you're in Miami and you fly up to New York? Get away from the crowds, come up to New York, because you know what? You might like some of the cold weather and you might want a little bit of a change from, the sun and sand in Miami or Fort Lauderdale, where I actually live. So that's my tip for the week. Otherwise, you all have a great week. I'll be back with you next week. And thanks for tuning into the podcast, the Travel Pulse podcast. Oh, by the way, make sure you subscribe. Subscribe to the Travel Pulse podcast. We'd love to have more subscribers. And again, tell all your friends too.